This is the news, reported by Chet Huntley and David Brinkley.
On schedule and on target, the men and the spacecraft of Apollo 10 splashed into the Pacific today and were brought aboard the USS Princeton. The three space voyagers, Colonel Tom Stafford and Commanders John Young and Eugene Cernan, appeared to be in excellent physical condition as they stepped aboard the helicopter carrier. NASA officials in Houston said that the perfect performance of Apollo 10 had provided the final confidence to undertake a moon landing mission. But it will be 2 weeks before Apollo 11 is given the certain assignment for mid-July. As the Apollo 10 crew streaked toward Earth early this morning, they provided us with a final televised view of our planet.
And the closer you get, the better it looks.
Jack, one reflection that we felt very strong about as we show you our last telecast here of the Earth is that we felt very strong about sharing with you some of the adventure, the excitement, the challenges, and the rewards of these 8 days. And through this endeavor, we hope that we've made you and millions of people of the world more of a part of the history that's being made in our day and age.
The carrier Princeton was waiting for the Apollo 10 in the South Pacific, 400 miles east of Pago Pago, just after dawn.
We've got a visual sighting right off the bow of the carrier just to port. We can see a helicopter vectoring that way. It looks like a red dot with a long, long tail. The visibility is very good today. The weathermen are better than their word. Princeton will be standing, we assume it's directed 500 to 1,000 yards from the expected splashdown area.
It's in the water. Apollo 10 is back down in the Pacific.
9,000 yards.
Helicopter crews were already hovering nearby when the space capsule landed in the ocean. Frogmen went down to the capsule and attached a flotation collar. The commander was the first astronaut out of the capsule, followed by Young and Cernan. The three astronauts had logged 700,000 miles in 8 days and 3 minutes. They rehearsed all phases of the lunar flight planned for July, except the actual landing on the moon. When they stepped out of the helicopter on the Princeton, there were shouts and cheers from the crew.
Colonel Stafford. Colonel Stafford in the middle. He's bald, 6 feet even, about 175 pounds. Cernan, about the same height, very lean. He's graying close-cropped hair. He's on the left. And a cheer from the sailors. John Young, the smallest, 5 feet 9. All of these men veterans. 3 Gemini flights before this for Colonel Stafford, and he's docked more than any other astronaut. He's being greeted by Captain Cruz, very crisp in his starch whites. Gosh, they look as fresh as you can. It's amazing.
Well, first of all, it's really great to be back from the moon, and all of us feel in great shape, and I can't tell how much we appreciate all the support from the people around the world. If you can see us back in Houston with Chris and Deke and George Lowe and all of them, and also how much we think we've increased the knowledge of man's environment we're going to press on here. It was a tremendous team effort, and we was all shared by all of us. And here's another man from the team, Gino.
You know, the thing that made this possible is being a part of the greatest country in the world, and it's great to come back to it. I tell you, it's just tremendous, and I thank everybody in it.
Later, President Nixon telephoned the astronauts aboard the carrier and told them it was a proud moment for the country. He said he'd like to fly in space, but he didn't think he could make it as an astronaut. And he invited the astronauts and their wives to dinner at the White House. David?
Now, the knowledge, the expertise, the experience, and the engineering needed to land 2 men on the moon are in hand because of Apollo 10 and the other flights that went before it. And so, nobody knows any reason at all why the schedule set 8 years ago cannot be met. 2 Americans walking around on the moon, picking up rocks and examining the landscape this year. Subject to delay, the launch date is July 16th. And the date for the first men to land on the moon, climb out, and walk around is July 20th, 1969, a date that will be remembered as long as men remember anything.
The Huntley Brinkley Report is produced by NBC News and brought to you in color by
Black & Decker. Men who work with power tools know you can expect the best from Black & Decker.
Men who build with power tools need power tools that can take it. Black & Decker power tools. Grinders for steel. Hammers for big jobs in concrete. Screwdrivers that fasten fast. Black & Decker power tools. Built to stay on the job long after the shine wears off.
We are putting the 3 leading sleep tablets to a dramatic laboratory test. One of them is Nitol. Of course, it's safe taken as directed. You can see which one it is because it dissolves twice as fast as the others. That's right, it's this one, Nitol. Nitol. It helps you get to sleep fast, and it has the Good Housekeeping seal. And now, Nitol has a fast-acting formula in a modern capsule. Introducing the Nitol Sleep Capsule.
We asked Joe Gemrock if the right denture cleanser can make a difference.
Can it? You know how kids notice things. When your dentures aren't just right, they let you know. So I tried Polident tablets. What a difference.
Polident tablets fight denture stain and odors safely with effervescent oxygen action. We put this stained denture bar into warm water with a Polident tablet. In minutes, your dentures are cleaner, brighter, fresher.
Oh, what a difference.
American troops in Vietnam have begun 2 new offensives, both of them in the north, near the demilitarized zone. They have both been going on about 2 weeks, but the news has been withheld until now for security reasons. A few days ago, in the Senate and elsewhere, and from Senator Edward Kennedy and others, there was criticism of the military strategy in Vietnam on the grounds it was causing heavy casualties needlessly. Needlessly, it was said, because the U.S. no longer hopes for a military victory. Well, the general commanding one of these attacks so criticized was Major General Melvin Zeiss, here interviewed by NBC News correspondent Bob Jones.
I was there every day, a good part of every day. I flew over it. I was on the ground. At one stage of the game was subjected to mortar fire, so I think I had a good appreciation. I might add that my son was here in the Ashow and still is. He's a young captain who's advisor to one of the ARVN battalions, which is located right here in the Ashow, and even yesterday was in contact. So and certainly would not risk lives other than in what I consider the proper execution of my mission.
Did you find the kind of enemy supplies that indicates to you now that the enemy was indeed moving things in for some kind of an offensive movement?
Well, it's interesting. People have asked, well, what are we doing in the Ashow and why did we go in the Ashow? It's interesting to note that I went into the Ashow and in its environs right down here about March 1st, and since that time we've killed 922 enemy and captured 5 of them. We've captured over 1,200 individual weapons, over 300 crew-served weapons. But even more spectacular than that, close to 5,000 RPG rounds, which are very difficult on our troops, and 13,000 mortar rounds, not to mention 188 122 rockets. So now we're talking about things we picked up that if we didn't have, they'd be landing on us one day. And they land on Hue, and they land on Da Nang, and people like to report that they slammed in. Well, I'd sure much rather scoop them up than wait till they slam in, and I'm sure everybody else would.
The stated American strategy is this: if the Paris peace talks don't work, the Americans will, nevertheless, train and equip the South Vietnamese to take over the war so the Americans can get out. Nobody says when, but the chances are the time for this will be long rather than short. Today, South Vietnam's defense minister, Nguyen Van Vie, said he didn't think his army could begin replacing American units until sometime in 1970. In Foxborough, Massachusetts, there is a village common, 265 years old, with a wooden bandstand needing a coat of paint. Beginning yesterday, clergymen and others stood in it, reading aloud the names of all the 35 Americans killed in Vietnam. Their voices became hoarse and too weak to hear, but they were trying to call attention to the cost of the war, and so they read on.
The vigil will be of this form. We shall read the names of those Americans who have died in Vietnam and shall offer prayer on behalf of them and their families, and prayer that God bless us and equip us for peace.
Gary Paul Meyer, Pleasanton. Otto Paul Meyer III, Palm Desert.
Joseph Philip Arrington of Phoenix. Mark Andrew Bateman of Oracle. Robert Daniel Benton of Temple.
James Edward Schlotman, Carmichael. Rick Ray Schmidt, Lawndale.
Kenneth Wayne Ogles, Dalton. Clyde Owenby, Hiawassee.
James Alvin Jr., Rainwater, Billingsley. Bobby Ray Alexander, Decatur. Robert Warren Allen, Birmingham. Harold Arnold Pritchard, Barnard.
Oscar Aguayo Jr., Orrin Harry Eldred of Casa Grande. Lee E. Anderson of Phoenix. Joseph Manuel Aragon of Phoenix.
Randy Blake Wright, Alcon City. William Andrew Wright, Hopkinsville.
James Douglas Bedgood, Goldona. Freddie James Benjamin, Natchitoches.
Emmett Mays Jr., Columbus. Jerry Jackson McDaniel, Winder. Edward Magruder, Cusetta. George S. McKellen, Atlanta. Roy M. McWilliams.
35,000 names. After dark, they read all night by flashlight, and this morning they finished and they prayed for the men who were lost and their families. Senator Anderson of New Mexico, of the Finance Committee, says he will support a bill to put extra taxes on industries making money out of the war instead of continuing the 10% surtax applying to everyone. At the same time, organized labor announced it opposed the surtax until there is an immediate, substantial, and fair reform of the entire tax system. Chet?
South Vietnamese President Thieu leaves tomorrow for visits to South Korea and Nationalist China before going to Midway Island for his meeting with President Nixon on June 8th. Yesterday, Thieu took over the leadership of a new political alliance, a pro-government coalition called the National Social Democratic Front. Thieu announced 7 weeks ago that he would form an alliance of non-communist parties to oppose the Viet Cong in future elections. But, observers said, the group that Thieu put together hardly represents the popular front that the South Vietnamese president said he was aiming for. It consists mainly of hard-line conservatives. But the president described it as the first concrete step in unifying the political factions in South Vietnam for the coming political struggle with the communists. He insisted that this is not a party aimed at seizing power. Thieu also said that if it becomes necessary to form into resistance groups and continue fighting to keep the communists from taking power, that is what his government will do.
Scratch your kitchen floor with really sharp fingernails and you can scratch off the shine. But not this side. It's protected with new Arrow Wax for a shine that's hard as nails. Watch again. With a high-priced wax, the shine scratches off. New Aero Wax with 50% more vinyl plastic. You just can't scratch the shine. It's hard as nails, so you can wax less often. New Aero Wax for a shine that's hard as nails.
Been a rough week. You've been waiting all week for this weekend. But there's a fly in the oatmeal. A headache. The painful kind that makes you feel tense. But a boy deserves a full-time father. How do you shake this headache? Anacin. Anacin relaxes the tension as it relieves pain. Life's fun again.
The Huntley Brinkley Report continues, brought to you by Simmons, makers of the hide-a-bed sofa. When Simmons can give you just the sofa you want, isn't it nice it hides a bed, too?
These are sofas by Simmons in every style and size and fabric you could want. Each one different, personalized, yours. But wait, there's something hiding in there. A bed. Hide-a-bed sofas by Simmons. When Simmons can give you just the sofa you want, isn't it nice it hides a bed, too?
A judge in Memphis today denied a plea by James Earl Ray for a new trial in the murder of Martin Luther King. Ray pleaded guilty 2 months ago and received a 99-year sentence. A report from NBC News correspondent Fred Briggs at WMC-TV in Memphis.
It was the same courthouse, the same courtroom where James Earl Ray was convicted in March. But it was a new judge. The first judge died shortly after Ray's conviction. And when Ray walked in today, he had a new team of lawyers asking for a new trial, hinting that Ray was the tool of a conspiracy, misrepresented by his former lawyers. The state's case, summed up by Assistant Attorney General Robert Dwyer, was that Ray waived any right to a new trial when he pleaded guilty, and what's more, signed a statement giving up that right. The defense summary presented by the youngest of Ray's lawyers, 29-year-old Robert Hill, was rather vague. In essence, he pleaded that constitutionally no man should be able to waive the right of retrial. Ray sat slumped in the same resigned way he did in earlier court appearances, almost as if he knew what the decision would be. It was against a new trial. Judge Arthur Fakeman ruled that Ray's plea of guilty amounted to a voluntary confession that in itself forfeited a new trial, not to mention Ray's signed waiver. When it was over, Ray's lawyers were asked why they did not bring up the alleged pressure on Ray from his former attorneys.
You have to ask Mr. Hill. Why did you not bring that out, sir, your feelings about the pressure of the voice? The attorneys discussed the matter and decided not to. Well, could you tell us your reason? No, sir. You still believe that he was pressured by Mr. Foreman and coerced? I certainly do. You believe there was a conflict of interest? I certainly do. Will these be reasons for pressure to be brought up at a subsequent appeal, sir? Quite likely. So James Earl Ray goes back and begins to serve his 99-year prison term. And all the questions about what made or who made Ray do what he did remain not only unanswered, in court they have yet to be asked. Fred Briggs, NBC News in Memphis.
There's a regulation that the only remaining son in a family cannot be drafted. Today, the Supreme Court ruled that he can't be drafted even if the family no longer exists. The case involved Jack McCart of Chicago. His father was killed in World War II. His mother died later. And McCart was sentenced to 3 years in prison for refusing induction. The court also postponed until the fall, when there will be 2 new justices, a challenge to the right of juries to condemn a man to die. David?
Tomorrow, Los Angeles elects a mayor. Thomas Bradley, a city councilman, a Negro, is leading in the polls. He predicts victory. Mayor Sam Yorty, trying to be re-elected, is running behind a little, but lately has been gaining. He predicts victory. Here's a report from NBC News correspondent Jack Perkins.
In a very affable way, Mayor Sam Yorty has been running a ferocious campaign. He has smiled and spoken casually, but what he's been saying is that a conspiracy is about to take over Los Angeles if he's not elected. A conspiracy, he claims, of black militants, white radicals, and communists. He spreads the word wherever he goes. The word, when translated, is race.
Tom Bradley, how are you? See you. How are you?
Tom Bradley beat Mayor Yorty easily in the primary, and as the runoff began, polls suggested he might beat him easily again. The polls have closed since. Bradley, a councilman, a former policeman, has the support of most prominent Democrats in the nation and many of Hollywood's notables. Bradley makes a quiet campaign, calling to question some corruption in Yorty's 8 years, saying it's time Los Angeles got a mayor the rest of the nation won't laugh at.
I'm prepared to deal
At first, Bradley and Yorty shared platforms, but Bradley refuses any longer. So we filmed Bradley by himself and Yorty by himself. And by editing, we put them together. How's the campaign going, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I think it's going fine. It's been a very difficult campaign because we're up against some districts where we just practically have to give up their block voting. And this in spite of my long record of friendship for the minority people.
The black community in Los Angeles has decided to support Tom Bradley because of what they know about him and his record and what he proposes to do for this city. They also know Sam Yorty. When he ran the first time, 8 years ago, he got overwhelming support in that community. But he has broken a long string of promises, and they know him for what he is.
They've made quite an appeal in that district, you know, vote for a brother and this sort of thing, and it's had effect, and I think many of them are confused. Some are just frightened. The militants have a way of intimidating people in those areas, and sometimes they're just afraid to oppose them.
Sam Yorty has always been a man who put on a gut-level fight, but I must say I never expected it to stoop this low. He's now clearly made it a central theme of his campaign to deal in the art of fright and fear and the appeal to racism.
Many people are afraid of the militants, and that doesn't mean just the Negro people are afraid of them. Many other people are. For instance, we've had the first time I've ever seen a situation like this where many women will not put on a Yorty bumper strip because they're afraid their car might be damaged.
Bumper stickers on the car that I use in the campaign have been torn off. That doesn't mean anything, you know.
You believe there's a power combine of black militants, white radicals, communists manipulating Bradley's campaign?
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I know it. It's very obvious here.
It's utterly ridiculous. It's an old strategy and tactic that has been used by Sam Yorty on a number of occasions in the past. But I think that that's a style that is long since effective. And I don't believe the people of Los Angeles are going to buy it any longer.
If Yorty should upset the polls and win, it would probably be attributed to his campaign these last few weeks. He would be elected on the warning that if he's not, a conspiracy of black militants, white radicals, and communists will take over Los Angeles. Jack Perkins, NBC News.
When you begin to tire out and you're feeling poop, give yourself a lift with Vivarin. Vivarin is new. It's a stimulant, see? Take one for a lift. Try it and see when you face so many of those tiresome chores, when you have too much of a job outdoors, if you feel you're slowing down during your busiest day, if at times you feel yuck, why not feel this way? Liven up with Vivarin. Fine stimulant, see? Liven up with Vivarin. Great, you'll see. Vivarin. Give yourself a lift with Vivarin. Vivarin.
Nicoban sure beats smoking. Yes, in a nationwide study, 4 out of 5 of those responding cut down or even stopped smoking with Nicoban. Now meet some of these people.
I cut my smoking way down, at least 80% with Nicoban.
I stopped smoking completely with Nicoban.
I stopped smoking with Nicoban, and I didn't gain a pound.
Nicoban helped 4 out of 5. Try Nicoban, recommended by doctors for years. Nicoban sure beats smoking.
The Alliance for Labor Action, which is a loose alliance of the Teamsters Union and the United Auto Workers, held their first national conference today. Both unions are out of the AFL-CIO, and they proposed a course of action which will bring them into sharp conflict with the AFL-CIO. David?
The other day, a subcommittee holding budget hearings turned up the following fact, perhaps interesting. During those early years of the Johnson administration, when he was making a great show of turning off the lights, the White House electric bill went up. For several reasons, they air-conditioned the police booths on the White House ground, and the president in those days went on television quite a lot, and the lights used a lot of power. So the White House electric bill rose from $42,000 a year to $50,000. Donald Rumsfeld, a congressman from Illinois, was sworn in today as the new director of the anti-poverty program. New York's Mayor Lindsay in Washington told President Nixon the welfare programs are bankrupting the American cities and must be scrapped or replaced or something. He said there must be some system that rewards families who work and encourages them to work, whereas the present system encourages them not to. And he said it must be taken over by the federal government because, he said, it's unfair for the taxpayers of one city or one state to pay for all the welfare clients pouring in from other states. A Northeast Airlines plane was hijacked to Cuba. It landed safely, returned to Miami, where it was headed in the first place. There were 3 hijackers, 2 with guns and 1 with a knife. The New York Stock Exchange did nothing spectacular one way or another. The Dow Jones Industrials declined about 0.5 point, and an average share of common stock lost 10 cents. Chet?
The achievement of Apollo 10, the men and the machine, probably outranks anything of similar nature thus far undertaken by man. Rarely do so many people and so many intricate parts function so flawlessly. But at the risk of flirting with heresy, are we certain about the value or the net return of this incomparable success? Not all startling achievements yield clearly comparable results. Marco Polo's journey from Venice to Peking and back, for example, seems to have produced results not up to the effort. But Apollo 10 is of a different order. There's always the chance that it may lead to startling discoveries in space and new explorations and more than we ever knew about the moon and the planets. But we just don't know now. So the balance sheet of our moon conquest may be indefinitely delayed. Good night, David.
Good night, Chet, and good night for NBC News.
This is the General Motors Mark of Excellence. It's on more than 190 GM cars, but you're only interested in one. And no matter what your price range, GM gives you greater choice. Even under $2,750, GM offers 50 cars. That's more than anyone else. Another advantage of this mark. GM Mark of Excellence. From General Motors.
A demonstration of the deep action agitator of the Frigidaire jet action washer. The agitator that gently deep cleans clothes with power currents like these. The deep action agitator of the Frigidaire jet action washer. Gently deep cleans clothes. And it makes a wild milkshake, too.